right, everyone, thanks for coming. We're very fortunate to have Josh Carter here with Patriot Bootcamp, speaking about his founder story. With that, let's give him a warm welcome.
Thanks, everybody. As Michael just said, my name is Josh Carter. I am the current Chief Operating Officer for Patriot Bootcamp, and I'll just gloss over what that is. Is everybody familiar with what Techstars is? Techstars is an incubator program for startups. So we are a Techstars affiliated nonprofit. We help transitioning military veterans and spouses who want to build a tech startup, help them scale that up. So we take that 3-month Techstars model and we compress it into a weekend. So as you can imagine, it's pretty intense. It's like a fire hose of information. But after they're done with the program, they're able to kind of walk out with some fundamental understanding about how to grow and scale their startups. Maybe they're ready for Techstars or another Y Combinator or whatever incubator program. But that's what I lead. How many people are here that either are startup founders or hope to found a company at some point? Cool, so a good mix. And then I assume the rest are employment, really guys are hoping to get a job in tech. Yes, I'm saying you guys like pizzas, just awesome, a lot of energy, sweet. So what I'm going to do today is my talk is going to be really small and short because I want to leave enough time for everybody to ask questions. So I'll run through these very quickly to give you context because I'm sure you guys don't give a shit about what I did in my career. But I want to make sure there's some context so that when you're asking questions, you know what my background is. Cool? Sweet. So my background. I'm a Navy vet. I got in the Navy right out of high school. In fact, I graduated high school at 17, so I needed a permission slip from my mom to sign up for the Navy, which was awesome to start off my career that way. But I spent 3 years in the Navy, and in that time went to 30 different countries, did 2 tours in the Persian Gulf, did 5 tours in the Caribbean as part of counter-drug operations. And then I came home and kind of struggled about what I was going to do next, and eventually landed at a little phone company called Pac Bell, which is now gone. Of course, AT&T gobbled them back up after being split. People know their history about communications. But I did that. I climbed poles and called under houses, doing residential phone lines for about a year. And then I became an Avaya tech and went into sort of phone systems, large-scale phone systems, voice over IP, put in a lot of systems for people like Google or Yahoo, and worked there building call centers. In fact, my first experience with Portland was I built the Yahoo call center out in Hillsborough 10 years ago, I think. And then after that, I got into cloud communications and was hired into a company called Five9. So Five9 is a cloud call center solution. So in other words, when you log into a website, now you're part of a call center. It's a really cool little cloud-based communications tool. But I did that for about 2 years until I got hired on and recruited into a company that nobody had ever heard of before called Twilio. And so I was employee number 60-ish at Twilio. Now they're 1,200, I think. They're pretty massive. But my role at Twilio was, my title was escalation manager. But at the time, because we were so small, it meant that I was working with product, I was working with support, I was working with customers, I was dealing with outages and vendor relations, all these things that like 5 teams do now, I did by myself because we just didn't have a lot of people doing that. And right around that time, I started getting the startup bug. I'd been doing internet radio a little bit and interviewing people like Henry Rollins and Imagine Dragons and Margaret Cho and doing things like that about music. But I really wanted to do something more. So here in Portland, I started a company called Pluck. And Pluck was a digital marketing agency. And the sort of, the reason we even started it was we wanted to bridge the divide between tech and music. If you talk to a lot of bands, they felt jaded, especially after Beats got acquired by Apple for $3 billion. A lot of bands didn't benefit from that monetarily. So there was a lot of jaded tension between the music industry and the tech industry. So we intended to bridge that gap. And so we built things for like Taco Bell. If you go to feedthebeat.com, they have this music platform. And we built that solution for them. We did an app for the Super Bowl in New York. We did stuff for Disney. And at the time, and this is where the technical piece comes to it, a lot of engineers here will understand, we kept having to rebuild solutions over and over again. So spinning up an EC2 instance or an S3 bucket or configuring MailChimp or whatever it was, we had to keep doing these things over and over and over again. And we knew there was a product here. So we spun out of Pluck Brightwork. So Brightwork was a back-end as a service. In other words, you would go into Brightwork, sign up for an account, get a YAML file, modify its business logic, do a BW push that logic out, and suddenly you have a RESTful endpoint. All you had to do was tie in your front end to the back end. So now suddenly you had all your infrastructure needs in one place, and it worked really well. We took that through Techstars in Chicago. Then we came home and we died, like most startups do. During that time, I had been going through this thing called Patriot Bootcamp, and it just so happened that the timing was right, where I got hired on to lead the organization. So now I'm the Chief Operating Officer, but I'll be promoted up to lead the organization here pretty soon. So that is my founder story. The reason why I wanted to run through that so quickly was because I wanted to really understand more about what you guys are looking to get out of your time here, or if you're founders and have questions about founder stories. I have a lot of them. I've fired my co-founder. I've had to kick my co-founder out of companies. So yeah, definitely will help you understand that. It's hard, but happy to do that. So with that, I want to move into the Q&A part and answer any questions that you guys have. Yeah.
So when you came back from Techstars, that's a really great story of business. The decision to continue a project,
Yeah.
it seems like it has potential, or to, I don't know what your situation is, but to kill it or to find a way to change it.
Yeah.
What brought you to that point when you were in that incubator and you came out and get back?
So the question was so because we have people remotely, the question was, what brought me to the decision to kill it after we came back from Techstars, right? So I had a really good technical co-founder. I don't code, I do a little bit, but you don't want to be working on anything I build because it won't work. So I had to bring in a technical co-founder as a result. Brilliant guy, knows a lot about distributed systems. And when I was working at Pluck, we were basically going to these meetups and talking about the same problem. He was doing distributed systems and having the same problem where he had to basically configure all these back-end services from scratch. And we were doing smaller things like apps and web apps, but we're still having the same problem. So after a while, we thought this would be a great product. And so I think on the front end, it made a lot of sense because we understood what the problem was. Where we went wrong, especially where I went wrong, was I didn't set up enough about what it took to be a startup founder. It's hard. It is the hardest thing you'll ever fucking do in your life, period. There's nothing harder than creating a startup anywhere. You're nodding your head and laughing, but it genuinely is. And so when we got back, I don't think I set up my founder enough about what it takes to have the stamina to keep going. And so as a result, it just didn't work with him. But that also scuttled a lot of the progress we made because I didn't have the ability to kind of pick up where he left off. And then when I tried to bring in people that came in, they really just either weren't a culture fit or didn't understand how to really build it, which is it's a good testament to how high his skill set was. So I still own the IP, and there were some people sniffing around to buy it, but I mean, it wasn't a hard decision. It was hard in that I spent the summer severely depressed because I'm a military vet, and when I take money from somebody and I lose it, that's really hard on me personally. So it was really tough on me personally to go through that process of like, these people aren't going to get their money back. Some of them are friends that, and I got to go look them in the eye and say, thanks for giving me $25,000. It's gone. It's a hard thing. So at Techstars, specifically Patriot Bootcamp, what we've started to do is make mental health part of the discussion around starting a company. And so at every Patriot Bootcamp, I do something called Surviving Startup Failure. And it's really important because, one, it's starting to become more prevalent that people need to understand what it's like to go through this process. The other, it's really different when you get a room full like this of veterans who've seen action in Iraq or Afghanistan, who've seen some shit. And they go and they sit in front of me and they say, because my startup may fail, I've thought about killing myself. That's profound. That is profound. When did startup failure eclipse PTSD as a threat to our veterans? But it's because we inherently don't like to let people down. It's just built into our DNA. So it's one of those things that I've really started making a point. In fact, I'm speaking at Phoenix Startup Week next month, and that's the talk. Same things, surviving startup. Yeah.
Potential mental downside or mental health impacts?
So the question for folks that are watching, is the purpose of the program meant to simulate or somehow uh, get people ready for the startup failure? Is that right?
Right.
No, because I don't think you can simulate that. You really kind of have to go through it to really understand it. The problem, what I'm trying to do with my talk is break that wall down and say that it's okay to talk about it. Because as startup founders, what happens is, and I do this myself, when I was a startup founder, people I hadn't seen in a while would go, "Hey, how you doing, Josh? Living the dream." You know, like we all have that answer. Like we don't want to be seen as things aren't going as well as they probably should be going. So we're trying to break that wall down. It's like, it's okay to talk about failure. You're going to fail, and that's okay. What defines you is how you get up. And so really trying to break that wall down and say, it's okay if you have failure. If you feel like you're going to fail, it's better to have that discussion with somebody so that we can figure out how to mitigate that failure, or to just show that you're not alone. Like, I failed, and a lot of it's founders, right? I've had really shitty founders, or I have been a shitty founder. But either way, like, it just hasn't gone well. We had a really amazing product. Brightwork was ahead of its time. In fact, if people know what Parse is, Parse was sort of back-end as a service 1.0. Facebook bought Parse and then shut it down. James and Ilya, who founded that company, were our advisors. Like, we thought we had it all figured out because we had the guys that failed first helping us to make sure we didn't fail. And we did. Like, because we didn't have a founder that knew how to, like, keep going and have stamina when shit goes pear-shaped.
I'm really curious about the concept that came from like the lean startup
Yeah.
thing that happened a couple years ago.
Yeah.
The concept of fail fast, fail harder.
Yeah.
Do you teach people what to do after they fail? Do you talk to people? It's like, okay, so this blew
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Do you tell them what possible options they can do?
Yeah, so the question is, do I tell people or teach people how to what to do after their startup's failing? No, because it's different for everybody, right? So I've known a lot of local founders who are amazing entrepreneurs that just basically said, "I'm going to go get a job," you know. And so it's different for everybody. Truth be told, I run a startup incubator program, but my wheels are always turning. Like, what's the next thing I want to work on? And I think you either have that or you don't. And the ones that fail once and then go out and get a job, they're not built for it anyway. And I think the market ends up shaking that out anyway. So you either do and you're going to keep going. Brightwork was my fourth startup. I booked shows in the Bay Area and lost a lot of money doing that. So my wife said, can't do that anymore. So I moved into internet radio, right? Because I still wanted to do music stuff, but I didn't want to lose a lot of money. And doing a podcast was like $100 a year. No big deal. Kept me in music. Then we did Pluck because we were like, kept hearing people complain that tech and music didn't play nice together, so we moved into that. And then we did Brightwork as a result of Pluck. So there's a consistent step in everything I've done, but I would keep doing it. If I had an idea, I would do it all over again. Yeah.
Kind of like, you're a vet, I'm a vet. War zones are easy, flying through thunderstorms, a little more difficult, but this is like grad school,
Yeah.
and there are no right answers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
You may think you have a right answer, you'll find out.
yeah, and you can't set somebody up for what it's like to go through a startup. You really can't. You can just say, I can stand up here and say it's really hard and I'm a better person for it. I've learned a lot of stuff, but you're going to go through it and make the same mistakes millions of others have done, right? You're going to go out and you're going to go talk to a VC before your product's ready. And you're going to go look back and go, man, I shouldn't have talked to that person. Or you're going to release a product or spend too much time on it. And that's the reason why I wear this shirt is we released our product during our program at Techstars. And I had a co-founder that was really trying to perfect the platform, like really get it perfect and really make sure that somebody was going to like it. And after watching him struggle, I dropped these shirts on his desk with stickers all over everywhere and just said, this is our mantra until we launch our product. Like, fucking ship it. I had a really good mentor who was a coworker of mine at Twilio. His name's John Sheehan. He ran RunScope before it got acquired at Computer Associates. RunScope is an API testing development platform. And I got on the phone and I said, John, we're really trying to figure out how to acquire lots of customers. What did you guys do at RunScope? He goes, we didn't worry about pissing off any customers because there's always 1,000 more customers come through and piss off. So we just we didn't care about that. The others, we just put the product in people's hands and let them tell us what they wanted. And in fact, API testing wasn't even in their roadmap until customers started saying, hey, we want to be able to test our API. How do we do that? And so they built a platform, and it accounted for 80% of their revenue. So just get the product out. Just get it out, because unless you're embarrassed by your first product, you're doing it wrong.
Robert Lutz. Anybody here haven't heard that name?
Robert Lutz?
Yeah, head of GM, head of Chrysler.
Yeah.
Bunch of stuff. He has 8 rules for doing a business. That's what started in the auto business.
Yeah.
One of them is, if you're pursuing perfection, you're pursuing a road to ruin.
Yeah. We had Twilio. I don't know if you guys know much about Twilio, but Twilio has these 9 things. They have them up on their website. Might be buried about this time, but one of them was draw the owl, and it was based off a meme that Jeff Lawson found on the internet, and it was step 1, draw 2 circles. Step 2, draw the rest of the fucking owl. Like, but it was really good because it set us up for that mindset of like, just figure it out. Like, nobody's writing the book of how to do these startups. I mean, they are, but most of them are wrong, right? Like, until you get in the shit, you're not going to know how to do it. So we had things like be transparent, all these 9 things that guided us. And if they didn't, if there was we would go into a meeting or an outage or something, and Jeff would be like, okay, tell me what 9 thing you made this decision off of. And if you couldn't answer that, you were doing the wrong thing. So I think it's really important, even if you're a team of 2, to create these things that are important for you, values, missions, whatever you want to call them, because anybody that comes in behind you needs to explicitly understand what you stand for as a moral compass. And if they don't, that's just going to breed tension, and your shit's going to go pear-shaped. So that was really important. Amazon did it. He was a CTO at Amazon, so he brought that mindset at Twilio, and it is really the guiding principle behind why Twilio is the leader in cloud communications today. Yeah.
What do you think about like the lean startup or artist art books like that?
Yeah. So the question was, what do I think about lean startup or other startup books like that? I think they're a good principle. Every business, every individual is different. So they're good to glean off what's valuable to you and your business. I think nothing replaces real world experience. Nothing replaces you going through it yourself. You can read the books, but you're still going to make the same mistake, right? You're still going to not do the right, not have the right information on your site or whatever it is. So you're still going to make that same mistake, and a book's not going to mitigate that. You ultimately just need to glean information off your network and find a really good mentor that'll help you bounce these decisions off of. Because a book is great to get that foundational information. What it's not good of is when you are really frustrated at 1 o'clock in the morning and you need somebody to email or text or Slack and be like, this motherfucker here is not doing what he's supposed to. How do I deal with that? Like, a book's not going to give you that answer. So, does that help?
Yeah, I meant more like in I think there's a lot of like almost religion based off of those books. Where people like super subscribe to them. I felt like that's exactly the road you should take.
Yeah, I mean, and it like I said, I think it works for. It doesn't work for every single business. I subscribe to the model of let's just build it and get shit done. We did a lot of things that didn't scale. So, for example, we wanted to build a focus group, but we didn't know how. So we just built a meetup that was like back-end as a service meetup. And we used that as sort of a facade for a focus group. So we really drove the conversation around, like, what do you guys like about Firebase? What don't you like about Firebase? What do you wish was in something that was Firebase 2.0? And we were like, really, that's awesome. But like, we had 16 junior engineers in there all bitching about the fact that back-ends as a service all suck. We're like, that's awesome, really cool. And we just used it as a focus group. It wasn't something that I read out of a book or learned anything. We just did it, right? And same with Twilio. Twilio wrote the book on developer relations. There's a reason why developer evangelists are so prolific. Twilio basically wrote the book for that because they understood that developers were the path to getting into large businesses. Because if a developer adopted that tool and went back to their CTO and said, hey, I'm saving 50% of my time because I just used this tool, their CTO was going to adopt it. So that's why we focused on that as well. We almost took a 2-pronged approach. I think that was one of our problems was we focused on too many use cases. Yeah. Yeah.
What were some things that you wish you had known then that you know now? I feel like, a couple pieces of advice. Had I known this, I could have really come forward
Yeah.
on
So the question was, what do I know now that I wish I knew back then? So one of it is that when we created our entity, we had an amazing lawyer who I recommend. If you're starting a startup with somebody, find an amazing lawyer. It doesn't matter if they're 6,000, whatever. Like, just find a good lawyer. We had a good lawyer where he had to sign this document. Neither of us really understood what it was until my co-founder left. And then he broke it down. He's like, hey, your co-founder signed this document that said he authorizes you to buy back his shares already. I'm like, what? I don't have to go chase him down? Like, he's already signed it? Sweet. Now he's off my cap table. So we had a really good mentor in Techstars. His name's Sam Yeager, who is the creator of OkCupid, who went back and sold it to Match.com for $90 million. And he told this story about not having that agreement. And he had a co-founder that they kicked out years before they went to Match, who was holding up the sale because he was still on their cap table. Can you imagine, like, Match.com's ready to write a $90 million check, and some knucklehead you hired 5 years ago is like, no, I don't think that's good. Like, that's stupid. So we had a really good lawyer that foresaw all these because he represented a bunch of startups, and knew co-founders often don't stick together. So when he left, when he resigned, I cut him a $1,900 check. He was off my cap table. Huge, huge, because if anybody came sniffing around to buy our IP, then I didn't have to go to him and say, hey, these guys want to buy us. That cool. He can go off and do whatever, and he got $1,900 for his effort. So that was the biggest lessons I learned. But beyond that, it's really people. Like, you could have an amazing idea, and if you have shitty people, then it doesn't matter. Execution is 80% of a startup. And so finding good founders in the early stages, finding investors in the early stages that do more than just write a check, that can like help move the needle, super important. Surrounding yourself with good mentors, people that have real world experience, expanding your network, really, really important key things. Yeah.
Can you recommend finding investors first or growing your business organically?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was finding investors first or growing organically, bootstrapping essentially. If I had to do it over again, I would bootstrap. I don't want to ever take any investor money. But it's not the same for every business, right? Like, if you want to really grow fast, investor money is the right way to go, or going through an incubator is the right way to go. So it's different for every business, so that's a hard question to answer. I think you just have to be smart about it. Like I said, finding the right investor. I'll give you a good example. We had an angel investor that wanted to come in for $150,000 for our company. Individual, wealthy guy around here. But he didn't understand how to invest in startups at an early stage. So as a result, there was a lot of verbiage in his agreement that he asked for that were non-standard. Things like first right of refusal that never expired. Can you imagine me going to my D round, raising $92 million, and I go, hold on, Sequoia, let me call this moron over here to make sure he's cool, that he doesn't want to also write a $90 million check. Like, he's not going to write a $90 million check. So there were a lot of that stuff that I had to look out for. So you just have to figure out what's important for your company, what your objective is, and then finding the right person. Before we changed from an API aggregator to a backend as a service, we were calling and having conversation with partners at like DFJ and talking to guys like, yeah, we're going to change the way data is pulled, and then we pivot to this. And I ran into that same partner like a year after I called him, and I was like, I'm so sorry I called you. That was stupid. I totally wasted your time. He's like, nah. 90% of my calls are wasted time. You got to kiss a lot of frogs. So, so that was, you know, it's again, it's just different for every business.
I'm curious about some numbers. Did you ever chase any numbers? Were you ever saying we're going to get this many users, we're going to aggregate this many, bases? Like, was there anything where it's like we're not getting to this point that we need to get to, like ride or die kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the question was, were there any numbers that we try to hit as we were growing our business? Absolutely. I mean, if you don't have a target, then you don't know where you're going. And so for us, that was the other sort of friction point. There's two schools of thought when you come to SaaS, right? There's get a lot of users, don't worry about they'll pay later, or there's the, get them to pay right off the bat. And if you get incremental increase, at least you're showing progress. I was of this school over here. Like, I don't care if I get $5 from 5 people. If I get $5 from 8 people the next month, I can show incremental growth. I can iterate on that success. And so that was my thinking. my co-founder didn't think that way. He wanted to get 5,000 users, then we'll turn on monetization. We were going to run out of money way before that. So I wanted to make sure that because I was having conversations with firms that were like, hey, if you had 12 users one month and 20 the next month, and they were all paying a certain incremental amount, then I could sell this and we could scrape together an angel round of like 3 million. And because my founder was technical and wasn't in these meetings, it was hard for me to go back and be like, dude, we need to turn on monetization like yesterday. So it just created friction. But if we didn't have those agreed upon rocks, big rocks that I called them, that we all agreed was important, then we weren't going to figure out how to grow in the first place. Yeah.
What are some key characteristics? So you're on the business acumen side, trying to get things working.
Yeah.
And you also need a technical person. What are a couple characteristics being technical to find more fastidious and oriented, and less about the business aspect of it?
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of marry those two. What are a couple characteristics you recommend for the technical side? You're looking for a technical co-founder.
Yep.
What are you looking for success?
So the question was, if I'm looking for a technical co-founder, what are some of the characteristics I'm looking for? For any co-founder, I'm looking for somebody that doesn't mind getting out of their lane, right? So a technical co-founder, in my opinion, any co-founder needs to understand how to go over here, if they need to go to a customer meeting, if they need to answer support tickets, if they need to write a blog post for content marketing. If you don't have that person that's willing to go in the other lane, you have an employee, you don't have a co-founder. That's key. And so I look for somebody that is willing to understand their role may overlap with my role, because I'm fine answering support tickets. I don't care, I'll do that. It may be wrong, but I'll answer a support ticket. I'm not above that. I don't mind going to talk to a technical audience because I know enough to be dangerous. But like, if I don't have that other person that's willing to go into my lane, and I'm so willing to go in their lane, then I have an employee. I don't have a co-founder. And that's a huge distinction. You need to be able to find somebody that does that. And then also, if you're setting up that expectation on the forefront, hold them accountable when they're not, right? There has to be somebody that leads the company. Like, even at a two-person team, there has to be somebody that's just the lead of the company. And that's just because, one, if you're chasing funding, the investors like to see somebody is in charge. Like, if nobody's in charge, that's a huge red flag. So they want to see that somebody's capable of making a decision for the entire company. So, but at the same time, it's that balance, right? You want a founder to have an equal say on things. So I've always been inclusive. I've always been sort of like, let's figure this out as a democracy. But at the end of the day, my signature goes on that term sheet. So I'm going to make the decision. And if you don't have somebody ready for that, then it's going to fail. And that's exactly what's happened in my past, is that I found people that were like, that sounds great. And then when it came time to actually doing it, we just didn't happen.
How do you figure out why your customers were winning?
That's a good question. So the question was, how do you figure out who the customers are that are willing to pay? That should be your first focus as a startup. Who is going to pay for this and how much? So one of the things that we played around with was, we knew our platform would be valuable to digital marketing agencies because we were one before we spun out. And so we started chasing after digital marketing agencies who said, we know that you have a prototype team, and that prototype team has a front-end engineer, and that they're just going to build some prototype that doesn't work. What if you had a front-end engineer that could actually put a back-end into it and make this PowerPoint an actual product? That was great. So as a result, we had a digital marketing agency that built an app for the Super Bowl for Taylor Swift and DirecTV. They built that thing in 2 days, ran it for the Super Bowl. We processed 250,000 API calls in a 30-day period. They absolutely loved it. It took longer to get Taylor Swift's team to approve the design than it did for them to build the app. They loved it. But we just couldn't iterate on that progress. Like, we had so much on the product roadmap that we wanted to get done that our customers were asking for, and ultimately we just had a CLI. That's it. You went in your terminal or whatever thing you used and you did a BW push, but everything was CLI. We didn't even have a backend to manage users yet. So, if I had to do it all over again, I would find a customer to pay I probably would have waited to go through Techstars until we had 5 or 10 customers, because going through an incubator impacts your momentum. And I probably would have made sure we had enough paying customers to make sure that we could have closed our round faster. Sorry, yeah.
How does going through an incubator impact your momentum?
Everything. It's everything. So the question was, how does going through an incubator impact your momentum? It's everything. I mean, because the first 30 days, and I'll only speak to Techstars. I don't know anything about 500 startups or YC other than what I've read, right? Sam Altman blogs all the time, and he's a dick. But anyway, for Techstars, the first month is mentor madness. You have no control over your calendar. So you're taking 6 to 8 meetings a day, 30-minute meetings or hour-long meetings for people that want to throw opinions about your business. So you're taking like all these meetings about people that think they know what you're doing and want to give you advice about how to go about it. So there's this term called mentor whiplash. It's real. Like you walk out of there after that 30 days, you've taken 100-something meetings. Now you have a binder full of all these opinions about where you should go and what you should do. It's really tough. The next month is programming. So teaching you financial modeling, which is super important. If you don't know what financial modeling is or how to do it, learn, because it'll tell you to the minute when you're running out of cash. So important. The other is how to broach an investor, how to get in front of Fortune 500 companies, how to build your network, marketing, IP laws, all these things that you don't think about when you start a company, because you probably don't have that background. Like nobody's worried about how to protect their IP. I filed a trademark after my business closed and just recently got the award. The business is gone, but I just got a trademark for it. There's all these things you don't think about until you go through it. So, but Techstars, it just has a huge impact because you're trying to divide and conquer, and as a team of 2, it's really small. One of the things, if you ever decide to go through an incubator, one of the things I didn't know is you could bring interns into the program with you. We had one company that had 10 interns. So as you imagine, like they made an easy go of it because they would get out of meetings and drop off their handbook to their intern and say, dictate this into Evernote. We didn't have any of that. It was just crazy. So yeah, it had a huge impact. But it was, like I said, it was absolutely weird. Sorry, you had a question, and I'll go back here.
Yeah. So like your first initial customers, are you looking for actual proof of concept in your business model, as in like I need you to pay X amount of dollars for this really early concept, or are you basically saying I don't care how much you're paying, I just need you to pay me something so that we can move past the situations? You said there was like the one side where you're like scale your user base, that's what you're focused on. Other side where you're like, oh, you're actual get someone paying for it. Those two models, what's the like?
They conflict, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question was like, how do you, if I understand your question, like how do you get people to pay and how much is right? Okay. So it's for our company, it was based off of how many API calls they were going to make per month. That's how we determined it, and so it was a really small amount, and it's basically business. It's our cost of goods versus how much we charged equaled gross profit, right? And so you have to figure out there are a lot of really good companies out there giving free credits to startups. AWS gave us $150,000 in credits. We had Azure credits were $200,000. We had SoftLayer credits were another $150,000. So you know what we did? We built on Docker, so we can like move our platform when we ran out of credits. So we had $750,000 worth of credits, but at the same time, we knew how much those credits were. So we took how much we were spending per month, equated that to how much usage the customer would get out of that, and that was still what we would charge them, because we knew we were eventually going to run out of credits. But that's still important. So when you're approaching a customer, either get a letter of intent that they want to do business with you, and try to get them to pay something. But finding a model for what you're going to charge customers in an early stage shows your customer that you have some stability in that range and that you're already thinking about that. If you don't, if you're like, what do you think this is worth? You're like, nothing. Thanks for not charging me anything. They're a business. They want to get as little as possible. So think about that, and you're always going to charge less than what you think it's worth because you're trying to get your foot in the door. Don't do that. Charge what your service or product is worth, always. Find out how much your competitors are charging and charge maybe a little less than that, but charge what your product and service is worth. Your time is worth money. Don't give it away.
And my question is similar. Basically, when you start a startup, do you have already exact idea and customer niche that you are going after, or do you have a generic idea? Hey, I know this area, and maybe people are needing my product in the future. I don't know exactly what type of product I'm gonna
Yeah.
make, but I just started and swing it.
So the question was, when you're starting a startup, do you have an idea who your customer is? No. End product,
Exactly.
yeah. No, because it'll change. It'll change. When we started Brightwork, we were an API aggregation for data. We're going to take Lytics and all these other API aggregation or APIs that do data and put it in one API because our thought was we thought there were gaps in the data, but what we were really creating was redundancy. We had like 5 different APIs that we feed into our API collecting data, and we had 5 sets of the same fucking data. So we're like, okay, cool. Number 1, our customers don't need that much data. Number 2, developers don't give a shit about that. Their customers do. So we're like, we got to rethink this. And again, we were troubled with building these backends as a service. So we started to go down that way. We didn't know if our customer was going to be a developer or a big customer. We didn't know that until we started to pitch it. We knew we wanted to go after developers first because we knew that was the path that Twilio took, and that's how they got traction. But we also knew we had to survive, and companies have money. So we wanted to chase after businesses as well. But look, every business is a hypothesis until someone pays you. Then it becomes a business. Yeah.
Did you ever fear like giving up intellectual property when you were in the early stages of a startup, or you were afraid to bring it to the people that might just be the ones that say that's a good idea for you?
So the question was I ever afraid of bringing the IP or afraid that anybody would take the IP within the meetings we were taking? No. Because again, it's execution, right? We had, in fact, there's a company here in town now called Stackery, doing pretty much the exact same thing we were doing. And yeah, and they're great. I know those guys. They went to Techstars in Seattle. They'll probably succeed where we failed because ultimately we had a bad team. So it didn't really matter to me when we would go into meetings with potential partners, because at the end of the day, if we couldn't execute, it didn't matter. The IP is worthless.
Did you start your startup alone, or you first look for a team and stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was, would I start my startup alone or find other folks? I mean, that's hard because I'm learning how to code now so that I don't have to worry about relying on others. And maybe that's a control freak part of me. But I've been burned enough times to know that like I need to figure out how to do a lot of these things. And having redundancy in people is not a bad thing. So yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's impossible to do it alone. It really is. And incubators won't take you if you're a solo founder. That never happens. So it's just, what's your capacity to do everything? You can. So there's an argument that can be made bringing contractors and do things, but then you lose quality, right? So, and what I will say is that what I've learned as a founder who has created a couple companies is it doesn't matter who you bring in, they will not love your idea more than you. So that's the other thing you as an individual who's creating this entity has to be aware of. You're going to find somebody that you think is going to believe in your idea, but just know in their heart of hearts, they don't love it as much as you do. Because it's your idea, you started it, you created it. They are just here to help build it, and you just have to be right with that.
You are saying then these people are more employees than co-founders.
It could be. So the question was, these people are more employees than co-founders. It could be. I mean, look, if they're, as I said earlier, if they're willing to go in the other lane and help you grow the business, and they're willing to be flexible and willing to put in the sweat that you're putting in, then yeah, they're 99% in, and they're willing to be there. Pretty quickly the people that are there just be employees versus people that are all in with you. And truth be told, we lived in Chicago for Techstars for 3 months. We left our families here. Like, we lived in Chicago for the summer. So I was all in. I thought he was all in. But, and I said this on the podcast earlier, if you don't set up your family and friends for the journey you're about to go through, then it's going to be really hard. So you need to really not only understand the journey you're going through, but your friends and family need to understand it as well. If they don't, then it's going to be really hard for you to have them understand the journey you're going through. And I've lost friendships because of it. It's hard. Really fucking hard. Yeah.
So you talked about earlier about having hired a co-founder. Out of curiosity, what is that? I mean, technically you're finding the company together and starting a company together, so it's two equal parts. Basically, you're divorcing your co-founder.
Yeah.
How does that process work? You actually, at what point
Sure.
you decide I need to divorce this person from the
Yeah.
company?
So the question was, how do you know when to divorce your co-founder, and what's that process like? So from a procedural standpoint, it's really just if you have the more votes from a stock perspective, if you own more than the company and someone else comes in, then it's a pretty easy vote to just vote them out from a procedural standpoint. How you know whether or not you need to fire that co-founder is when there's just red flags, right? In my instance, we had a co-founder that just didn't pull their weight and said that they could do things they couldn't. We were in an investor meeting. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. We were in an investor meeting, and the investors were all sitting around the table, and the investors go, "Where do you see this in 5 years?" He wasn't asking where I was going to be in 5 years. He was asking, "Where do you see the company in 5 years?" This guy stands up and he goes, "In 5 years, I'm going to be on a beach drinking Mai Tais and hanging out with pretty girls." And I'm under the table trying to kick him, like, "Shut up! What are you doing?" And so we get to me and my other co-founder, and we're like, hey, we really see this growing organically through the developer community. We want to obviously focus on our business end of things, the B2B side. And my co-founder over here does the same thing. Like we echo what Josh says. So we're in Bend, we're driving home, and the whole ride home, we're like, dude, I think you fucked that up. And sure enough, we get a call the next morning that says, hey, we'd love for you to go through this program, but not if you have that guy. Like, we cannot. That was a train wreck. Loved the business, didn't like that as a guy. And there was other red flags before that, but that was definitely when we knew, because now we got an outsider's perspective of like this person that wasn't fitting. So it was really awkward because I met him for lunch. He had all of our company shirts that he had just printed for our company. He goes, "Here you go, Josh. Here's all these shirts that I just had printed. Cool, you're fired." It sucked. It wasn't fun. But if you're not willing to have those conversations, then you're not willing to put the company before personal problems. And so that was exactly how we laid it out. Like, this is not about, this is about what's best for the company. We need to find the best people to make sure it grows. It's the hardest conversation you'll have with somebody. But if you can't have those conversations, then maybe you're not ready for a startup life. It sucks. It really sucks because I liked him. He's a good guy and liked hanging out with him. He was a lot of fun, but
Since you were in a startup and you had a handful of employees, are there any sort of culture disputes and or points at which you exercise your power subtly to try to get behavioral change on certain fronts? So maybe like giving say this guy that messed up with that pitch, sort of like a runway so he anticipates. Like he can't honestly go, oh, this is out of the blue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
I think about some of those tactics.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're. I think you can in a close relationship, everybody wants to be on the same page, especially if you start.
Yeah.
But thinking broadly about employees and management.
Yeah. So basically, the question is basically broadly, how do you manage people like that? And so. Yeah, it's hard. I've been a manager at just a regular company, and I've had to let people go, and there's a lot of legal ramifications and kind of covering your ass type of thing. But when it comes to just running a small startup, everybody has to be on the same page, and that's why it's important to set those values up early on. Because if you bring in somebody and you say, "Look, these are our values that we all abide by. Are you cool with this?" and they go, "Yeah, that's great," and then they come in and they're not, then again, it's like, well, what of these values did you use to make this decision? And yeah, there's some runway that you give them, some guidance, and it's part of mentoring as well. But you catch on pretty quickly after a series of small things or you know, just a series of things that happen, whether or not someone's going to be a long-term cultural fit in your company. And so, again, it's at a startup at an early stage, you want to have those conversations quickly. You want to hire fast and fire fast. Like, bring people in fast, and I know that's contrary to what some people are saying, like, be careful about who you bring in, but you want to fire and hire just as quickly, because a startup at an early stage needs to be a moving target. It needs to move fast, and bringing people in is part of that. Cool.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes and answer your questions. I mean, overall, just look, startups are really hard. Getting in the tech industry, finding that niche is really important. And so, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys' time.
Thanks for being here, Josh. Appreciate it.
No, cool.